Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Sarah and I'll be taking you through your class here today. So today's class is based around Ustrasana, so camel pose. It is a back bend. Essentially the class is working towards that, but the class won't be fully focused on that. So we'll be working with a more regressed version when we work into camel pose, so that we can build into the pose. And essentially you might find yourself not fully in camel pose by the end of the class today. It's more about today I want to focus on slowing that pose down and seeing where we can come into that pose with more form and more awareness of the body, and in return it might help us progress deeper into that pose. So in that respect it is aimed towards people that haven't necessarily practiced camel before and want to practice, but also it's aimed at those that have a fully formed practice with camel as well. So it's catering to both individuals. With that in mind, this class is layered, so there are options to go deeper into your practice and options to pull back. So as always, everything that I offer in my classes is optional, invitational. So if there's something that doesn't feel right, isn't causing a great sensation in your body, feel free to park it and come to a different movement or take a breath for a moment. So with Ustrasana, with camel pose, essentially it's strengthening the back of the body, so the glutes, hamstrings, the low back, middle back, and it's stretching the front of the body, so the hip flexors, the quads, the stomach, the abdomen, the chest, the shoulders. So it's opening the front and strengthening the back. So we'll be working towards that today. We're going to begin today's class on our backs. We are starting in Supta Baddha Konasana, so reclining butterfly. So if you've got some blocks, this would be really handy to have for this class as well. If you don't have blocks, maybe finding something that represents, acts as blocks, and then that way, you can just offer yourself a little bit more support throughout the practice. If you don't have them, it's no biggie, you can still practice the class. But yeah, when you're feeling ready, make your way down onto the mat. So for Supta Baddha Konasana, you're bringing the bases of the feet to join, creating a diamond shape with the legs essentially, and then bringing the hands back behind you, slowly walk yourself back. You can always start from the back as well, laying down, and then bring the feet in towards one another. The blocks are really great here to prop up underneath the thighs or maybe the calves, just for that little bit of extra support before we bring some activeness into the legs. Beautiful. And once you've made your way down, positioning the hands wherever they might feel comfortable, maybe that's on the body or away from the body. Taking any last minute adjustments, maybe a shuffle of the shoulders out from underneath you. And maybe finding a little bit more length through the neck, subtle tuck of the chin in towards the chest. Maybe you close down the eyes or take a soft gaze here. Slowly taking your attention and your focus inwards. Allowing your day, your evening, maybe even your week to remain at the door. And to enable this next hour or so practice, however long your practice is going to be here on the mat, to be your space and your energy. And then once you've started to settle here, maybe bringing some awareness to the body. And just noticing some points that maybe you could be a little bit more comfortable in. And maybe taking those further adjustments. And then slowly start to bring your awareness to the breath. Maybe even placing the hands on the lower two ribs, so to the base of the rib cage. You can always hover the hands if you don't want to touch the rib cage. And just feeling the breath as it draws in and out. Maybe connecting your mind's eye to the hands as they rise and fall with the breath, as they're gently placed on the rib cage. Not forcing anything or changing anything, we are merely observing the breath at this stage. And just observing as it flows in and out. And then slowly bring some awareness to the rate of your breath, to the flow, to the length. Maybe observing any pauses in between your inhale and exhale. Still remaining the breath to be fluid and gentle, not changing anything, just observing any subtle differences in the breath, subtle pauses, difference in length. And then on your next inhale, allow the breath that you draw in to be a little bit deeper and still nice and slow. Maybe in through the nose. And then the exhale to also, if it's there for you, come out through the nose. Allowing the exhale to be slow, fluid, and gentle. Taking a few more rounds like so, and drawing it in, the breath gently, but deeper. And then maybe you're feeling that expansion with the rib cage underneath the hands. And as your exhale, feeling all the rib cage close back off. Allowing that exhale to be gentle and soft and slow. Maybe you even move the hands to the side of the rib cage. Either visualizing or even feeling that 360 breath as you draw the breath in deeper, more slowly, coming down into the diaphragm. And then obviously on the exhale, feeling the rib cage draw back in. Staying here for a few rounds of breath, feeling the rib cage expand to the front, to the sides, to the back. Staying with that gentle, slow, deep breath. And being mindful not to force it. Allowing the breath still to have a sense of fluidity here. Trying to maintain that breath through the nose as it draws in and out. Taking one more round where you are. And when you've done your final round, there is no rush. If you've got those props underneath your knees, keeping your feet in that butterfly position, just remove the props to one side. And then allow the knees to be the anchor points to draw down to the earth here. So we're still in our reclined butterfly position. Just offering a little bit more of a passive pose here without the support. Letting gravity do its thing. And then then slowly open up the eyes if they're still closed. And then slowly start to bring some awareness to the feet and push the soles of the feet in towards one another. You're bringing some activeness into the legs. You might even notice that the calves turn on a bit, maybe the hips, the glutes switch on as you push the feet in towards one another. And then soften them back down. So release the push, the push in towards the feet. And allow the knees to soften back down to the earth. Take that 2 more times. Push the feet in towards one another. Create that sense of energy through the legs. And then soften and release. And taking that 1 more time. Pushing the soles of the feet in towards one another. And then soften and release. Bring the hands behind the back of the thighs to help gently guide the legs in. And then extend one leg long and then the other leg long. Just taking a round of breath here. And then draw the knees in towards the chest, Apanasana, knees to chest. Maybe the hands are on the front of the shins, or maybe you're wrapping forearms around the front of the shins. You might find some movement rocking side to side here, or maybe you are finding stillness. And still anchoring the tailbone down towards the mat. Pause for a breath here. And then release the grip, plant the feet onto the earth, knees are bent. Send the right leg up towards the sky, flex the right toes towards the face, kick the heel up towards the ceiling. Take the right ankle over the top of the left thigh, finding figure 4 pose. You might like to bring the right hand to the right knee for a very gentle guide of the knee towards the front of the mat. And then bring the hands out towards the sides, so maybe about shoulder height. You can even cactus the arms here. And then slowly start to take some rocks side to side in your figure 4, still maintaining, driving the knee towards the front of the room. Next time the hips come to rotate over towards the left side, come to plant the foot on towards the earth. So the right foot is coming over. If that twist is too much, come out and just go as deep as feels good for you. You can always come to cross the legs instead if you find a supine spinal twist more comfortable here. And then while we're here, really think about pushing the foot into the earth and driving the knee forward to the front of the room. So we're finding a nice stretch into the front of the hip, maybe even a little bit to the outside. You might even notice it in the other hip as well. Take in a round of breath here, 4 inhale, 4 exhale. On your next breath, come back through center. Unravel the legs, send left leg up towards the sky. Flex the left toes to the face, drive the heel towards the ceiling. And then place the left ankle over the top of the right thigh. Gentle push of left hand to left knee to guide it to the front of the room. And then release the hands, either taking cactus arms or just spreading the arms out to the side. And taking some rocks side to side, rocking right to left on the hips. Taking your variation here, even finding your supine spinal twist, or as you come over towards the right this time, we're going to place left foot to the right floor. Left, you know what I mean. And then you're guiding with the hips, so we're not using the hands here. We are opening up the hip so that we're driving the left knee towards the front of the room. Using the foot as leverage, pushing into the floor. Taking another round of breath here. And then on the next breath, drawing back up through center, unraveling the legs, giving the knees a little squeeze in towards the body. Maybe some little rocks side to side. And then come to plant the feet down to the earth. So the feet are about hip width apart. And then shuffle the glutes so they're a bit closer towards the heels. This feels comfortable for you. Place the hands beside the hips, palms face down. They can face up as well, but we're going to create a bit of pressure through the hands. So slowly start to tuck the tailbone under. You might notice a slight lift of the hips as you do so. And then release. Send the tailbone down towards the ground, so we're creating some space between the low back and the mat, so creating an arch. And then just move between these two motions, tucking and untucking the pelvis. And then next time you come to tuck the tailbone under, push the low back down into the mat, slight tuck of the chin under, and then come to lift the hips up, push into the feet. Maybe the hands are also pushing into the mat. Come into fine bridge pose, and then low back down. Taking that again. And this time as we push up, just notice your knees. Do they want to collapse out to the side? Can you draw them through center so that they are in line with the hips? Knees are roughly in line with the hips or thereabouts. So we're keeping that sense of engagement into the legs. The energy is running along the front, through the back, and then low back down. And then taking that one more time, coming to lift up. Maybe if you want to feel that sense of engagement, you even bring a block to the inner thighs and you squeeze into the block to keep a sense of that energy drawing into the legs. Lifting up through the glutes, pushing into the big toe, the little toe, the heel of the foot, and then low back down. Beautiful. And then slowly, when you feel ready, take a round of breath here. Draw the knees in towards the chest. And then come to hover the legs. So the knees are coming to stack over the hips or thereabouts, so they're about 90 degrees. The hands can just rest beside you, or if you want to, you can bring them up so that they're hovering in the air. And really think about sending your low back down towards the earth. So you're drawing the abdominal walls in. And then on your next breath, come to straighten the legs. So they're about 45 degrees. Maybe pointing or flexing the toes, finding your sense of engagement. Pause for a breath. Then bend through the knees again. So we're coming to stack knees over hips. We're going to take that 2 more times. Come to straighten through the legs. So they're about 45 degrees or thereabouts. Maybe they come a bit higher if you're finding that the lower back is wanting to lift. Really point through the toes or flex to find that engagement in the legs. Bend through the knees. Come back to that hovering of the shins and calves parallel to the mat. Pause for a breath. And then extend the legs long again. Pointing or flexing the feet. Encouraging the low back down to the mat. Breathing here. Beautiful. Draw the knees back in. And give them a little squeeze in towards the body. And taking a round of breath here. On your next breath, send the legs up towards the sky. So we're stacking ankles over hips now or thereabouts. You can always bring the hands beside you once again. You can even interlace them and bring them around the back of the head. Pausing for a breath here. Really think about pointing through the feet here and engaging the lower abdominals. So we really want to think about sending the low back down towards the earth. And then on your next breath, we're going to alternate legs. So the right leg is slowly coming down to the mat. Pause to where you start to feel the low back lift. And then draw it back through center. Alternating, coming over to the left side. Drawing it all the way down to the mat or where feels good for you. And then all the way back up. So we're going to alternate legs. So coming over to the right side, alternating. So just noticing, like I say, where the low back wants to lift, and know that this is your edge. This is the place that you come to, the point that you come to. Coming over to the left side and taking one more, encouraging that point in the feet. Right, coming to lower. Lift the right back up. Come over to the left side, lowering to your point, to your edge, and then coming back up. Beautiful work. Release the hands if they're behind the back of the head, bend through the knees, and give the knees a little squeeze towards the body. Full inhale, full exhale. And then bring the hands behind the back of the thighs, slowly start to rock up and down the spine. And when you find yourself up into a seat, just taking any variation of seat, you can come up onto a block, a prop for example, or maybe you're just sitting in Sukhasana. And once you've found your way up into a seat, I'm just going to take some subtle stretches out through the neck. So coming to gaze slightly forward, and then on your next breath, draw the chin in towards the chest. And drawing the chin enough in towards the chest that you get a slight sensation along the back of the neck. And then drawing the head back through center, taking your gaze up towards the ceiling until you get a slight sensation along the front of the neck. So we're looking for sensation, we're not looking for any sense of pain or tension or any tugging as such. You just want a very slight stretch in the neck. Being very gentle with this space. Come back through center slowly. And then slowly start to take your left ear over towards the left shoulder. Allowing the shoulders to still soften down, we're not lifting the shoulders here. Maybe slowly, slightly start to lower the right shoulder down to create a little bit more stretch through the right side of the neck. And then come back through center gently and slowly. Take the right ear, over towards the right shoulder. And same thing here, maybe gentle pull of the left shoulder down to create a little bit more sensation through the left side of the neck. Beautiful. And coming on the next breath back up through center, coming off any props that you might be sitting on and finding your way into a tabletop. When you make your way into a tabletop, walk your knees back until you can come all the way down to the mat. Make a little pillow for your head with your hands, so they're coming out in front of you. And then come to bend through the knees. Draw the knees in towards one another so they're touching. So you really want to keep the legs together here. Flex through the feet, and then allow the feet to just drop out towards the edges of the mat. So imagine that your feet are weights, for example. So you've got the knees to touch, the legs are touching as much as they can, and the feet are falling out towards the edges. So this is helping to potentially open up into the hips a little bit, maybe into the low back, depending on your body anatomy. But we're just allowing gravity to do its work here with the legs. And they're being the anchors driving the feet down towards the earth. And keeping those knees in towards one another as much as possible. And trying to maybe release anything that you might be holding here. Can you soften and allow the legs to do what they're doing here? Beautiful. Come back through center, extend legs long. Bring the hands beside the rib cage, push up through tabletop, and then come to tuck the toes under. Slowly start to walk the hands in towards the body, ensuring that little pinky toes are tucked under as well. And then slowly start to walk your hands up the body, coming to find toe squat. Now, if this is too much, you can bring the hands back down to the mat. They can also come down to blocks. You don't have to come all the way up, but if you are wanting a nice Deep stretch along the back of the foot, into maybe a little bit into the ankles, coming into the toes, and then come to sit for a moment over the top of the heels. Maybe one hand to heart, one hand to center of the stomach, and come to maybe close down the eyes, connect to the breath here. Take your attention elsewhere. Coming to find your center. Beautiful. And then when you feel ready, there's no rush, take your time walking your hands back out into tabletop, maybe untucking the toes, padding out through the feet just to release, if that feels good. And then take the hands a handprint ahead of the shoulders, tuck the toes back under, lift the hips up and back, finding downward facing dog. So being your first downward facing dog of this class, maybe you want to alternate legs, bending and extending. Just find some movement here before coming to find some stillness. And so once you've found your way into your downward facing dog, just bring some awareness to your downward facing dog, to your positioning, to your setup. You may be inviting a little bit more of a generous bend in the knees to help create a bit more space in the back of the body. Firming down through the fingertips, the knuckle parts of the hands. Maybe readjusting the feet or the hands or the width of the arms and the shoulders. Just taking time here to set up your down dog. Sometimes it can be a pose that we just push ourselves into or come through quite speedily because we do it a lot in yoga. But it is a very intense pose in some ways. It's an inversion, and it, I feel, in my opinion, deserves a little bit more attention sometimes. Taking the gaze to the back of the room. Maybe you straighten the legs a little bit more here now that you've been here for some time. Beautiful. And then on your next breath, ripple your way all the way forward into a plank. Gaze comes slightly ahead of you. And then bend the knees as if you're hovering into tabletop. Send the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Slowly start to walk the hands in towards the back of the mat, finding ragdoll pose. So coming up ever so slightly, still a generous little bend in the knees. Allow the head and neck to hang heavy. Fingertips are not touching the earth, we're allowing them to come up. So they're just hanging in mid-air here. Beautiful, coming back out, padding your way all the way back out into that plank. Pausing for a breath here, maybe lowering the knees or staying up in plank. Really thinking about doming through the upper back. Shoulders are slightly ahead of the wrist. Hips are low. Really turning that energy on, that fire into the legs. And bend the knees as if you're coming to tabletop. Lift the hips up and back, down dog. Walk the hands towards the back of the mat. Finding ragdoll. Coming up ever so slightly, fingertips away from the mat. Maybe you take a little sway side to side this time. Allowing the head and neck to hang heavy. And taking one more round, padding the hands out, finding plank pose, knees up or down. So bring the shoulders ahead of the wrist, gaze slightly forward. Really thinking about sending the heels to the back of the room, finding that length through the body. So we're stretching the crown to the front of the room, heels to the back of the room. Doming through the upper back, pushing the mat away from you. Beautiful. Bend the knees as if you come into tabletop, hover, and then lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Walk the hands to the back of the mat, finding one last pose in ragdoll. Head and neck hang heavy, arms hang heavy. Maybe you're finding a little bit of bounce here and a little bit of a sway again. Taking any movement that's intuitive to you, maybe that's stillness. Taking the hands, padding them back out, finding plank pose. And then slowly walking your way towards the top of the mat, finding forward fold. So forward fold, you can have your hands to blocks, or your hands can be to the earth, or maybe elbows to knees, just above knees. Allow the head and neck to hang heavy. And if you've taken hold of opposite elbows, maybe releasing that here. And then slowly grounding down into the big toe, the little toe, the heel of the foot, come up to rise. Circle the arms wide. Draw the hands above the head, palms might meet. Draw them down through heart center, Anjali Mudra. Pause for a breath. And really pushing the hands in towards one another, thumb in towards the sternum. Draw shoulder blades towards one another. Hands beside the body, Tadasana, mountain pose. And pause for a breath here. And in your Tadasana, slowly start to bring your awareness to the feet. Maybe even take your gaze down. And notice how the feet are positioned. And then slowly come to lift the toes off of the mat. Spread all toes as wide as you can. And then plant them back down. And lifting the toes again, come to send the weight back into the heels ever so slightly. Spread the toes. This time maybe placing a toe down at a time, or maybe they all come down together. Just noticing the control that you have over each toe. And then shifting your weight slightly forward into the toes. Come to lift off of the heels. So we're coming to a tippy toe pose here in Tadasana. Gaze can come forward to find your focus and your balance. And then lower back down. Taking the weight forward again, coming onto the tiptoes, lifting the heels. Maybe they lift a bit higher this time. Beautiful. And then come back down. And then on your next breath, send the hands up towards the sky. Draw the hands through heart center, come to fold over the tops of the thighs. On your next breath, come to find your halfway lift. Bring the hands to the shins, flat back. Gaze is down towards the earth. Fold forward. Send the hands back behind you, reach them up and forward. Come to find chair pose. So we're sending the weight in towards the heels here. Maybe the toes lift ever so slightly. Hands can come to heart center. If it's too much, bringing the hands above the head. And then slowly start to shift your weight forward. Come onto the tiptoes. Lift the heels. Pause for a breath. Hands to heart center. Come to straighten through the legs. Bend and fold over the top of the thighs. Find halfway lift. And then come to frame the feet. Step the right foot back and then the left foot. Knees up or down. Just slowly lower your weight all the way to the ground. As slow as you can on the descent. Send the hands back behind you, palms face the body. Draw the legs in towards one another. Really reach the toes, reach the fingers to the back of the room. On your next breath, lift the head, lift the chest, lift the legs. Shalabhasana, locust pose. Pause for a breath. And bring the hands beside the rib cage, lower back down. Tuck the toes under, either lift up through plank or come up through tabletop. And then take yourself back into downward facing dog. Pause for a breath here. Beautiful. And then traveling your way towards the top of the mat, come to find forward fold. Sweep the hands back behind you and then bring them forward, finding chair pose. Slight tuck of the tailbone under, send the weight in towards the heels. And then slowly rock forward onto the tiptoes, come to lift the heels off of the mat. Finding chair pose on the tippy toes. And lower the heels down, come to stand, draw hands through heart center. Hands beside the body, Tadasana. Take a moment, allow the breath to catch up with the body. Maybe close down the eyes. Tune into the energy. Notice maybe where you're feeling the energy circulate most in the body right now. Is it the arms, the legs? Maybe it's the breath. Temperature. Just note any changes that might be occurring. And not attaching any judgment, just curiosity here. Beautiful. Come to circle the arms up wide. Draw the hands through heart center, come to bend and fold. On your next breath, come to find halfway lift. On the next breath, folding back down. On your next breath, sweep the hands back behind you. Hands come forward, finding chair pose. Send the weight into the heels. Slight tuck of the tailbone under, maybe the toes lift. And then slowly rock your weight in towards the toes, come to hover the heels. Finding a variation of chair pose here. Hands to heart center, come to bend and fold over the top of the head, over the top of the thighs. Hands to the shins, halfway lift, flat back, gaze to the earth. Frame the feet, step the right foot back and then the left foot. Being in your plank pose, either knees up or down. Come to lower all the way down to the earth, very slow descent down. Untuck the toes, send the hands back behind you, palms face the body, draw the legs in towards one another. Lift the head, lift the chest, lift the legs, Shalabhasana, locust pose. Beautiful. Pause for a breath. And then bring the hands beside the rib cage, lowering back down, either push up through plank or through tabletop. Lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Pause for a breath. And travelling your way towards the top of the mat, finding forward fold. Bending into the knees, sweep the hands back behind you, bring them forward, finding chair pose. Beautiful. Either coming slightly forward onto the tiptoes, lifting the heels. Really thinking about switching on the glutes as well as the quads, squeezing into the butt cheeks. Lower the heels down, hands to heart center, come up to rise, come up to stand. Hands beside the body, Tadasana. Pause for a breath. Beautiful. Taking one more round of breath where you are. Having your blocks close by if you're utilising them. Come to circle the arms wide, draw the hands through heart center, come to fold. Hands to the shins or to the earth or blocks, halfway lift. Folding down, framing the feet, step the left foot back, lower the left knee, come up to rise, low lunge. Pause for a breath. Come to bring the blocks close by so that they're to the outside edges of the right foot. And then really thinking about finding some length. So we want the chest to be slightly open here and we're coming up. So we're not rounding forward or collapsing over the top of that front foot. If you're not using blocks, you can still create that motion of keeping an open chest. And just noticing if we're collapsing or using that thigh to support us. Can we create a sense of activeness here? And then draw the hips back. Toes come to peel off the mat for half splits. And coming back forward into that low lunge. Chest comes forward. Draw the hips back, toes lift, find half splits. Maybe you come to fold a little bit here. And then taking one more move like that, coming back forward. And then draw the hips back. And this time with the blocks, maybe you bring them slightly underneath the shoulders. So we've got a little bit of support here in our half splits. Toes are bring the toes towards the face. And then very slowly on the next breath, imagine your foot is a tap that you want to turn on and off. We're going to take the toes over towards the right side. And then come back through center. Take the toes over towards the left side. Beautiful, come back through center. And just notice the internal and external rotation of the hip. Maybe that one side wants to go a little bit more than the other. For me, for example, I can turn my foot out a lot more than I can turn my foot in. So for me, my rotation is better going out than it is coming in. Yours might be different. Take in one more rotation, moving with the breath. Beautiful. Come to bend back through that front knee. Plant the blocks off to one side. Frame that front foot with the hands. Or maybe you've even got the hands onto the blocks and you're framing that foot. Tuck the back toes under if they're not already. Lift the back knee. And then from here, really thinking about creating space once again from chest to thigh. So we're not resting on the thigh, we're creating some energy through the legs. And then on your next breath, slowly come up to rise, finding crescent lunge. Readjusting the feet if needed here. You can always bend through the back knee to create a bit more space in the front hip. And then come to cactus the arms. Really think about draw shoulder blades in towards one another. Slight tuck of the elbows under as if they're coming forward. Spread through the fingertips, gaze slightly forward. Hands to the ceiling, bringing them above the head. And then bring some awareness to this back foot as we come to turn the back toes out. Come to face the long edge of the mat. So both toes are facing outwards, heels are facing inwards. Legs are straight to begin. And then bring the hands up towards the sky. On your next breath, we're going to come to cactus the arms. As we do so, we're bending into the knees, finding goddess squat. Really thinking about sending the knees to the back of the room. Opening up through the hips, maybe finding some depth. And then coming back up to rise, straighten the legs, send the hands above the head. Come to cactus the arms again, bend through the knees, find goddess squat. On this next round, come to lift the right heel. Onto the tiptoes of the right foot, lower back down. Lift the left heel. And then lower back down. Come up to rise, straighten the legs, send the arms up. On the next breath, cactus the arms, bend through the knees, finding goddess squat. Either staying here or going with alternate tiptoes, or this time on your next breath, really think about draw the shoulder blades towards one another, open up through the chest, lift both heels, come to find tippy toes in your goddess squat. Goddess energy or God energy. And then lower the heels back down. Beautiful. Come up to rise, extend the legs straight, arms above the head. Bring the hands to the hips, turn the toes to face the long edge of the mat. Heels can face out ever so slightly or a little bit in, depending on your anatomy. Really, once again, think about sending shoulder blades towards one another. Chest is slightly coming forward. And then slowly start to tilt your way forward, coming about halfway down, so the heart's in line with the hips for wide-legged fold. You can either bring the hands to the blocks and staying here. You can always bring the hands down to the mat. And if that's not enough for you or enough sensation, you can always bring the elbows also down. Gaze comes to the back of the room through the back of the legs. Really think about sending the sit bones energetically up towards the sky, the ceiling. And taking a round of breath here. And then from wherever you are coming through halfway lift. Slowly start to walk the hands back towards the top of the mat. Turn all the toes to face the long edge of the mat. And then come up to rise, finding crescent lunge. Once again, come into cactus through the arms. Draw the shoulder blades in towards one another. And bring some awareness to this front foot. Think about finding some stability and some balance in your crescent lunge. If you're feeling a little bit wobbly, readjust the feet. And then slowly come to lift the front heel off of the floor. So we're in this crescent lunge with a double tiptoe. And then lower back down. Hands to heart center. Come to lean slightly forward over the front of the right thigh. And then step the left foot in to meet the right, finding chair pose. Pause for a breath. And then come up to stand. Hands beside the body, Tadasana. Beautiful. Maybe even noticing for a moment if there's any subtle differences or changes in the right versus the left side of the body. And when you feel ready, come to circle the arms up wide. Draw the hands through heart center, come to bend and fold over the top of the thighs. Come to find your halfway lift, hands to shins, to blocks or to the mat. And then fold back down, framing the feet. And then come to step the right foot back this time. Lower the right knee down, untuck the toes or keep the toes tucked. Come up to rise for low lunge. Pause for a breath. And then bringing in the blocks, if you're utilising them, to the outside edges of the left foot. From your low lunge, slowly start to bring the hips back. Lift the left toes off of the foot, flexing through the heel. Half splits. Come back through low lunge. Bringing the heart forward, gaze forward. Send the hips back. Draw the toes towards the face. Taking one more round, coming back through that low lunge. And then drawing the hips back. Beautiful. Coming back through that low lunge, bring the blocks, if you're using them, underneath the shoulders. And then draw the hips back. Toes come towards the face. And from here, we're going to think about turning that tap back on. So from the center, slowly start to turn the left toes towards the left edge of the mat. Come back through center. Take the toes over towards the right edge of the mat. And just notice where this movement is coming from. Is it from the hip, or are you pushing the body to take it from somewhere else, i.e. the ankle, maybe the knee? Can you isolate that movement so it's coming solely from the hip, from that rotation? Maybe notice any changes that occur here. Maybe it's not so deep, or maybe you can go deeper. Just notice any little subtle changes that we make when we isolate movements in the body. And then come back through center, bend into that that front knee, into that left knee. Remove the blocks. Come to tap the back toes under if they're not already. Lift the back knee. Once again, think about finding that space, that energy through the legs. Readjust the feet if you need to. Slowly start to get very light through the fingertips, coming up to rise, finding crescent lunge. Hands above the head to begin with. And then draw the hands to cactus. So open up through the chest, cactus in the arms, spread the fingertips. Slight tuck of the elbows under towards the front of the room. Pause for a breath. Get maybe a little bit lower in your crescent lunge. And then send the hands up towards the sky again. Think about this back leg. We're going to rotate all the way to turn to face the long edge of the mat. Toes face outward, heels face inward for goddess pose. So we're in our goddess pose again. Our beautiful goddess pose. Come to straighten through the legs, send the hands up towards the sky. So toes face out, heels face in. And then come to cactus the arms. As we do so, come to bend the knees, finding goddess squat. So really think about sending the knees to the back of the room, tuck of the tailbone under ever so slightly. Draw shoulder blades in towards one another. Come up to rise, straighten the arms, straighten the legs. On the next breath, as you draw back down, cactus the arms, bend through the knees. Coming to bring the awareness into the left foot, come to lift the left heel. So we're on the left tippy toes. And then lower back down. Bring the awareness to the right foot, lift the right heel. Still keeping your depth here. Still keeping the cactus arms, lowering back down. Straighten the legs, send the arms up towards the sky. Pause for a breath. Come to cactus the arms, bend through the knees. Pause for a breath. And then either staying here or alternating heel lifts, or on the next breath come to lift both heels, hovering both heels off of the mat. Embracing any shakes or wobbles that might come along the way, and then lower back down. Coming to lift up, and then coming to bring the hands towards the hips. Turn the toes to face the long edge of the mat. Heels can turn out or in ever so slightly. Really think about opening up through the chest, draw the shoulder blades towards one another, hands to hips. Slight little micro bend in the knees, you don't have to physically lock out. And then slowly start to lean forward. Coming to find your wide-legged fold, halfway lift. And then either bring the hands to the blocks, or hands to the earth, or elbows to the earth. Coming to find a more passive version of wide-legged fold. Taking the gaze to the back of the room. Beautiful. When you feel ready, coming up, finding your halfway lift. And bringing the hands to the hip. Oh, sorry, not bringing the hands to the hips. Slowly start to walk your hands towards the back of the mat. Finding yourself with this low lunge stance. Bring the hands ahead of you, slowly come up to rise, crescent lunge. Taking a round of breath here, either hands to heart center or hands above the head. And really finding that buoyancy through the legs, that stability through the legs first. And then slowly start to peel the left heel off of the mat. Finding your crescent lunge, toe balance on the front left foot. Lowering back down, bring the hands to heart center. And then slight lean over the front of that left foot. Come to step the back foot in to meet the right foot. Right foot to meet the left foot. And then come up to rise. Hands beside the body, Tadasana. Maybe close down the eyes, take a round of breath here. Then come to circle the arms up nice and wide. Draw the hands through heart center, come to fold over the tops of the thighs. Slowly start to walk your hands towards the right side, turn all the toes, all the hands that we're now facing the front of the mat. So we've got the left leg crossed over in front of the right leg. And then we're going to slowly walk the hands out, finding this variation of plank with funky feet, and then unravel the feet. Come to bend through the knees, and then lower yourself all the way down to the earth. Slowly start to walk the hands towards the front of the mat, bringing the elbows underneath the shoulders. And we're taking the feet as wide as the mat, maybe a little bit wider to create a bit more space through the low back. If this is too much, you can walk the hands a bit further away from you, create a bit more space. We're coming to side Sphinx pose. So really firming down through the hands, spread through the fingertips, push into the elbows, chest comes through and forward. Pushing into the pubic bone, into the tops of the feet. Beautiful. And then come to fold forward, make a little pillow for the head, bend through the knees, take a few little windshield wipers side to side. And then come to frame the hands to the rib cage, pushing up through tabletop, and then coming to find yourself seated over the tops of the heels. So we're going to work into exploring our camel pose now, Ustrasana. So having some blocks close by, you can also have a little blanket underneath the knees as well, which can be quite nice, a little bit of extra support if you find that you get a bit of pain in the knees sometimes. Yeah. So coming to find kneeling, so we're coming onto the knees, come to tuck the back toes under, so the knees are about hip width apart. And then we're going to work with some camel lean backs to begin with. So really think about flattening off this front part through the hip flexors. So slight tuck of the tailbone under, squeeze through the glutes and allow the chest to be slightly open. You can always have the blocks close by for a little bit of extra support. Bring the hands out ahead of you or maybe onto the hips. And we're going to just take a slight lean back. So it's a very small lean back to begin with. You'll notice that the quads will switch on, come back through center. Maybe you untuck the toes, maybe you keep them tucked. So just thinking about that tuck of the tailbone under, flattening through the front, turning on the back of the glutes. And then maybe the hands come ahead or to the hips. And then slight lean back. This time maybe you lean back a bit more. Pause for a breath, keeping that engagement here, and then come back up. We're going to take that one more time. So it's like tuck of the tailbone under, flatten out through the front of the hips. Hands ahead of you or hands to the hips, slight lean back. Maybe you lean back a bit more this time. Pause for a breath while you're in this lean back and then come back up. Bring the glutes to the heels, take a little seat. A little wiggle out through the hips maybe. Beautiful. So once we've done our lean backs, come in to tuck the toes under or keep them flat. Send the hands up towards the sky. And then we're just going to work with bringing left hand to left heel, keeping that right hand high. And then alternating. If that's too much, bring the blocks to the heels, create a little bit more height. And just twisting over to each side, alternating hands to heel or to block. You can always bring the hands to the hips as well if that's too much through the low back. But we're just essentially twisting, alternating side to side. Beautiful. Lovely. And then coming to find yourself, so we've got the blocks either outside of the feet or maybe they're a little bit outside of the thighs. And then start to think about that motion we were just doing a moment ago where we was flattening out through the hips. Just really think about a strong bum. So flatten out through the hips. You can tuck the toes under or leave them untucked. And then thinking about opening up through the shoulders. So really squeeze the shoulder blades in towards one another. Send the hands up towards the sky and then reach them back behind you. So start to lean back. So like we do those lean backs, strong bum. Fronts are flat as you feel they can be. And then slightly lean back until you can take hold of the heels or the blocks. Once you feel you've got the heels or the blocks, then push the hips forward until it feels good for you. Drawing the shoulder blades in towards one another. Really thinking about that heart, sending it up. So imagine you've got someone that's got a little string that's attached to the chest and they're pulling you up. You're wanting to create some space between the ribs and the hips. Space in the lower back. Beautiful. Slowly coming up bit by bit. And then maybe taking a moment, coming to sit over the heels before giving that another go.
There's a couple of alternate options that you can take with the hands as well. You can always bring the hands so that the fingertips are facing upwards, palms are facing downwards on the low back to help create a little bit of extra space and lift. Or the hands can also come to heart center if you're wanting to explore not having anything to hold on to and a little bit more activity in your back bend. Just taking another round, so either coming to tuck the toes or keep the toes flat, having your blocks close by if you're using them, and then once again thinking about flattening out through the front, squeezing through the glutes, finding that strong bum. And then send the hands back behind you. Think about that lean back, still keeping that engagement. Hands either come to the heels of the foot or to the block. So once you feel like you've safely found the blocks or the heels, you might just even stay here. Or you can then project the hips forward, still with that engagement, drawing the shoulder blades towards one another, gaze slightly forward, or maybe you bring the gaze up. Finding that engagement through the glutes, through the front, through the shoulders, and separating the hips and the ribs, finding that length, that space. Beautiful. Releasing one hand first, maybe to the lower back, and then the other before gently making your way up slowly. And then coming to take a seat over the heels, removing any props out of the way. Taking a little shimmy and a little shake side to side through the hips. And then maybe making your way down so that you're coming to lay prone all the way down to the mat. Hands make a pillow for your head, and maybe taking some little windshield wipers side to side. Pausing for a few rounds of breath. And then when you feel ready, extending the legs back behind you so that they're nice and long down the mat. On the next breath, drawing the right knee up and out to the side so that you're essentially bringing the right knee so it's in line with the hip for half frog. Your hands can stay making a pillow for the head, or you can always come to cactus the arms and take the gaze to the left. And so that that right knee is drawing up to the right elbow essentially. Taking a round of breath here, full inhale and full exhale. Beautiful. Coming back through center, drawing that left knee back down. On the next breath, drawing the right knee back down, drawing the left knee out towards the side, finding half frog on the left side. And once again, you can cactus the arms and you can take the gaze to the right side of the room. And just releasing out through the low back. And coming to soften and settle here. If you find this too much, you can always come out sooner. If it's not deep enough for you, you could always put your knee onto a block. Just working with your anatomy and your body dynamics. Coming back through center, hands underneath the rib cage, pushing up and finding your way to laying on your back on the mat. Beautiful. When you've made your way down, bending through the knees, take the feet out as wide as the mat, allow the knees to knock in towards one another for a restorative pose. And pause for a few rounds of breath here. Beautiful. Walk the feet back through center. And draw the right knee in towards the chest, extend the left leg long. And take the right arm out towards the right side. Slowly start to guide that right knee across the left side of the body for a supine twist. Gaze can stay up or you can take it down the right hand.
Maybe you're finding some movement here, or maybe you're taking stillness. If you're looking for something a bit more restorative, you can place a block underneath that right knee or a bolster. And we're just maintaining that right shoulder to the mat. Taking 2 more rounds of breath where you are. And then coming back through centre, giving that right leg a little squeeze in towards the body, and switching over legs, drawing the left knee in, extend right leg long. Extend the left arm out towards the side, and then slowly guide the left leg across the right side of the body. Take in any variation, movement, stillness, or maybe a supported restorative version of supine twist. Maintaining the upper back down to the mat. Gaze can be up or down the left hand. Taking in 2 more rounds of breath where you are. And drawing the legs back through centre, bringing both knees in towards the chest for Apanasana, knees to chest. And extend the legs up towards the sky for waterfall pose, maybe giving them a little shimmy and shake backwards and forwards, side to side before finding some stillness. Allowing the knees to be soft, the ankles to be soft. For all the energy to flow back from the feet, through the calves to the thighs, and to the body. Maybe incorporate the hands coming up as well, or maybe they're just resting beside the body. You can always take this with the legs up against the wall as well. Or once again, you can have a more supportive variation, maybe having a bolster or a block underneath the hips. Taking 1 more round of breath where you are. And then coming to gently bring the feet down to the floor. Extending the right leg long, left leg long. And coming to settle into Shavasana, your final resting pose. You can always bring a bolster under the back of the legs, maybe a pillow under the back of the head. And you can even take it seated if you don't want to lay down. Take your final resting pose where feels right for you. And once you come to find your final setup, coming to close down the eyes or take a soft gaze. Making any further adjustments to the body. If you can be a little bit more comfortable, just 5 to 10% more, just making those adjustments where your body might be intuitively asking you to make those movements. And then coming to settle in. And coming to feel the backs of the heels weighted onto the floor, to the feet as they roll out to the edges of the mat. And noticing the calves, the knees, the thighs, and the hips as they all feel supported by the mat. And noticing the back of the arms, back of the hands, and the back of the skull. As the earth supports you here. And maybe noticing the jaw, softening this space. And noticing the tongue as it feels heavy in the roof of your mouth.
Noticing the eyes, the softness of the eyes in maybe the space in between the eyebrows. Bringing some softness to this space. And then coming to settle into your final resting pose, your Shavasana. When it is time to guide you and close the practice, I will let you know. Until then. If you are enjoying where you are, feel free to stay here and extend your Shavasana, your final resting pose, for as long as feels comfortable for you. If you're ready to close the practice and come to find some movement maybe into the fingers, the toes. Draw the legs in towards one another. Take the hands above the head, take a full body stretch. Taking a nice inhale through the nose and a soft exhale out through the nose. Making your way onto your side, whatever side feels right for you, before finding a round of breath. In through the nose, out through the nose, if it's there for you today. Before coming up to find a seat. When you've found your seat, coming to close down the eyes or take that soft gaze down to the earth, draw the hands to heart center for Anjali Mudra. Spread the fingers, draw the thumb in towards the sternum. Draw the shoulder blades back towards one another. And a slight lift of the spine, draw the crown up towards the ceiling. And draw the chin in towards the chest ever so slightly, to slight chuck of the chin under. Taking a moment here, bowing to yourself. Taking a moment in gratitude to you, to your body, for your dedication, for your time and space and energy sent here today. And may you all be safe. May you all be happy. May you all be healthy. May you all live with ease. From my heart to yours, it was a true honour to guide you here today. Namaste. And thank you so much for choosing to practice with me today. I'd love to hear how you found the class. And hope to practice again with you shortly. Bye guys.